Welcome back and thank you for staying tuned to Good Morning Kenya. This is now a different segment and it is Women at the Forefront. And I am joined by a lovely lady by the name Jacinta Mutonga, who is a love, feminine energy and relationship expert. And today we'll be looking at the topic of getting out of toxic cycles. Jacinta, good morning.
Good morning.
You're feeling
Vivian?
well?
I'm feeling good. How are you?
I'm doing well as well.
And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. If we can just begin by looking at toxic cycles. When you talk about toxic cycles, what are we talking about?
So with toxic cycles, we're talking mostly relational cycles that are dysfunctional, toxic, not fulfilling. So for the last 4 years or so, I have been coaching women in the area of self-love, that is loving themselves, and then learning how to co-create healthy, fulfilling relationships, whether those relationships are intimate or family relationships and even friendships and career relationships. Yes.
And how does one recognize a toxic cycle?
So you know your own dysfunctional cycles by the way your relationships are. So if you are constantly in relationships that are chaotic, abusive, dysfunctional, dramatic, that tells you that there is something that you need to look at within yourself. And I think that we tend to look at relationships from the perspective of what the other person is doing, how the other person is making us feel, how they are showing up. But relationships are actually a co-creation. There's always two people in the relationship. And whether we are aware or not, there is a way we are enabling that experience consciously or unconsciously. Yes. Yes.
So speaking about that, how does one identify their own toxic traits? You know, because as you've said, most of the times we always blame the other party. You know, they did this, they did that. So how does one, first of all, try and identify their own place in the toxic cycle?
Yes, and that's where the work of people like myself, come in, because most of the time we are not aware that the way we are experiencing the relationship, the way we are experiencing ourselves, the way we are experiencing the exchange of the energetic exchange between the two people is a co-creation, right? And a lot of times, for me who has been doing this work for a good 4 years, and I've worked with hundreds of women, most of the people, the ladies that come to me, they are experiencing some kind of a hardship or resistance or disharmony within the relationship. And they come to me, Jacinta, my partner or my sister or my mother is doing XXY. And a lot of time it's very externally focused. And it's my job now to bring you back inward and let's look at ourselves. What is it about me that is allowing this to happen, whether I'm conscious of it or not? How am I enabling that? How am I contributing to the energetic experience? And for people like me who are coaches, that is the job, is to bring awareness to our own behavioral patterns that are contributing to how we are experiencing the relationship. So if I'll give you a specific example. So if you're struggling, let's say with self-esteem issues or worthiness or lack of boundaries, you are going to know that by the way your relationships are unfolding. If you are highly, I don't want to use too technical or psychological terms like codependent, that just means that you're so disconnected from yourself, but you're so externally focused on what everybody else needs from you, and you are abandoning your own needs, right? So what tends to happen is you're going to end up with a relationship with people who, in your own opinion, they are using you, or they are not respecting you, or they are not giving you what you need. But when you are in that state of codependency, you actually are very disconnected from your own needs. And you just sort of expect your partner or the other person in the dynamic is automatically supposed to know what your needs are. But nobody can really read your mind and understand your needs unless you communicate them.
Yeah.
Now, there is a childhood component to all I'm saying, because a lot of us were not given the avenue or the ability to self-express and self-advocate and speak up for our own needs. It's not something most of us were taught. So we were to be seen, not heard. When that has been how you were raised, it becomes very, very difficult in your adulthood to just automatically know, oh, I'm supposed to just express what my needs are, how I want to be treated, what my standards are. And so when you're disconnected from your own self, your own needs, your own worthiness, then it's going to be very hard for you to express that outwardly in your adult relationships.
Yeah.
And how that will manifest is you're going to find yourself that you're giving, and not necessarily being reciprocated. And that will breed this, not only resentment, but you'll be talking about people use me. People always only want to, this one-way relationships where I'm giving, but getting absolutely nothing. So for the work I do, it is to understand, first of all, can we nurture that healthy relationship with yourself? Can you be in congruence with your own needs? Can you be in congruence with your own sense of worthiness? Can you be in congruence with your own boundaries? Because nobody can read your boundaries, and a boundary is not really a boundary if you haven't expressed it or communicated it. Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
Now, before we get to look at how to break, that cycle or that pattern of being in toxic relationships and so on, how do you, work on not getting into it in the first place? Is there a way that you can consciously work on not getting into a toxic environment or relationship? Can you spot red flags?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, so when, with relationships especially, we go into relationship based on what was modeled to us, right? How we have observed relationships being handled in our childhood, how conflict was handled, how we were taught or not taught how to be in healthy, or even know what healthy relationships look like. So a lot of it has to do with our upbringing and what was modeled to us.
Right.
Now, when we are not conscious of that, and let me just back up and say that for us, women especially, we were taught in childhood, and I think I speak for many when I say this, that boys are bad, men are bad, men make you pregnant, stay away from them, right? So that means you're not supposed to look at any men, you're not supposed to talk to any boys because they're not good for you, right? And so we never learn how to really have healthy dynamics of how to relate with men in healthy ways, right? So then we fast forward to, we've now become, like a young woman like yourself, you're now a professional, you're done with your education, and everybody is, where's the husband? When are you getting married, right? But between all of that, nobody ever sits us down and tells us, how do you become healthy for yourself first and foremost, so that you can enter into a relationship from a healthy space.
That's true.
How do you identify what healthy patterns and healthy behaviors in the persons that you're dating? How do you identify or vet healthy green flags? What do red flags look like? So I think there's a collective consciousness where we think that relationships are just about falling in love, and love will conquer it all. But that is actually not true. You can be in love, and two people can love each other, yet not be healthy for each other, yet not be healthy independently, right? Yet have a lot of childhood traumas they haven't healed. And all of that is going to come to fruition inside a relationship. There is nothing that triggers our unhealed parts more than intimate relationships, especially. Just because of the emotional output that is involved in them. So if I come from a childhood that was very chaotic, very dysfunctional, abusive, and otherwise not where my emotional needs were not met, I am going to unconsciously bleed all of that onto my partner. And my partner is also coming with his own traumas, unmet needs, unfulfilled needs. And we look to each other to provide that. But if we are not equipped, it is just going to be a chaotic environment inside that home. Yes, yes.
So how do you maintain healthy, relationships?
I think maintaining healthy relationships requires two healthy partners. And this is where now the work of coaches and therapists and mental health professionals comes in. And I'm so happy to see that as a society now we are embracing therapy, we are embracing coaching, we are embracing mental health care, because all that is it helps us become healthy people for ourselves first and foremost. And that's where now the nurturing of the healthy relationship with yourself, and you're healing your childhood traumas, and healing whatever, being able to meet your own needs. That's where that comes in. And now if you have a partner who is also conscious and intentional about their own growth, more than likely you're being set up for success in a relationship. Otherwise, if we are not intentional about that, and we just think that falling in love with someone in and of itself, love as a feeling is enough, that is actually not even sufficient. And love is actually a verb, it's an action word. It's consistent actions, more than just a feeling, I love so-and-so, or so-and-so loves me. Yes.
Yeah. Maybe what role does setting healthy boundaries play in avoiding or being able to break that toxic cycle?
So boundaries are a huge, huge part of healthy relationships. First of all, we gotta understand what boundaries are, right? Yeah. Boundaries are the parameters that we set around ourselves about how we want to be treated, how we want to feel in a relationship, right? The standards we set for ourselves. But boundaries are not just about me. The other person also has boundaries, right? Yeah. That I need to also respect and honor, because if we don't have those parameters for ourselves and respect the parameters for the other person, and then for the union of the relationship itself, set boundaries around that container of a relationship, you're not going to have healthy relationships. So within the container of the relationship, if it's me and my husband, then we have myself. I gotta be healthy for me, right? First and foremost, and then to show up healthy in the relationship. He has to do the same for himself. Those are two. There's always three people in a relationship. There's him, there's her, and then there is the relationship itself, right? So if I work on myself to be healthy, set those boundaries, love who I am first and foremost before anybody else can love me. And then he has the same, and then we come in that union of the relationship. We also have to respect that relationship. A lot of times, and especially in from the context of our Kenyan family or African family, there is so many stakeholders that are usually involved in our relationships, our marriages. There's our family of origin, our in-law families. And if the two people that are in the relationship are not protective of the relationship and respectful of the relationships, then you have too many people in the relationship, too many voices. And that is never really a way to cultivate a healthy, long-lasting relationship. So I think boundaries are a huge, huge part of it. You got to understand what they are, how to set them. You have to deal with the fact that when you set boundaries, people get triggered at first when you start setting those parameters for the people you love and care about, and especially those who you never set standards for. So if you start telling them, no, this is my new way of being. These are my new parameters. People get entitled and they get triggered and they will project that on you. So you gotta be able to deal with that. Yeah. Then there are those who benefited from you not having boundaries, and they are going to feel some type of way when you start telling them, oh, the old Vivian no longer exists. Then the old Vivian now, this is how she's showing up. This is what I can or cannot do. And just nurturing a healthy relationship with the word no. That it takes you a long ways to co-creating those healthy relationships with everybody in your life. Yeah. Yes.
Now, just from you speaking, someone might feel like it's so easy to get out of a toxic cycle or pattern, but sometimes it's not really as easy. You know, we've heard of stories of so many people, say women and some men as well, who are in relationships that are very, very toxic, and it's not easy to break that cycle. It's not easy to come out of, you know, that toxic environment. You know, there's the Stockholm syndrome where you're so used to it, so you're in it and you don't see, you know, if it is a problem really. So what are the steps maybe to get out of a toxic cycle? So
the first step is the being aware. Because when you're in a situation that is toxic, you will know everything in your life will tell you, everything in you will tell you that this is not healthy. Because our intuitive side, our intuition tells us when we are in dangerous situations, when we are in an unhealthy relationship. So just being aware is the first step. Number two, being comfortable and courageous enough to go seek help. That is talking to a mental health professional or a relationship counselor or a coach or a therapist. That's the next step. The other part of it is understanding the inner workings of a relationship. You mentioned Stockholm syndrome, and I think we tend to, with the best of intentions, tell people who are in toxic, abusive relationships, oh, you just have to love yourself enough to walk away. Yes, there's truth to that, but the actual steps, the actual doing of living is a little bit more complex because, as you said, there is the attachments, the toxic attachment, the bond, that bond of the Stockholm syndrome that you mentioned, or the trauma bonding, and these bonds are very, very addictive, right? Because when we get into a relationship, and especially the romance part of it, the infatuation part of it, where we are falling in love, it is not just a cognitive or intellectual thing. There is brain chemicals that are being produced by the body. There is the dopamine, the oxytocin, the PEA, the bonding hormones, and they can flood our bodies. And that's where that feeling of intense love and intense chemistry comes in, right? And there is this other part of it that is the love bombing that we hear people talk about, which is where both of you are pouring so much affection and intensity and a lot of attention into the relationship. And that can really bypass the organic process of getting to know one another. And so you're falling in love. It feels like love. It's really infatuation so fast, and all those body reactions, chemical reactions are taking place. And so even when you see the so-called red flags, the things that your intuition is telling you there's danger here, the chemical reaction within your body is keeping you so bonded and almost addicted to the person. And in that phase, it's really easy for you to ignore the red flags that you're already seeing. And then inevitably, as the relationship progresses into the next phase, where now the cocktail of the drug cocktail of brain chemicals is coming down, and now the true nature of human beings are beginning to show who they are. At that point, you're already really bonded into that attachment, and it's hard to pull yourself out of it. And when the relationship starts now showing toxic cycles, you're trying to recreate the high all the time, the high that you felt when you were in that infatuation, right? The honeymoon phase. Because it's really not reality, it's an illusion, right? And when you're dealing with especially very manipulative persons, let's say persons with narcissistic tendencies, psychopathic, sociopathic tendencies, they're actually really, really good at pouring in that affection and grandiose amount, insane amount of attention to you, and it can disorient you. So, and it feels good at the beginning. So when the abuse or the gaslighting and all these other things start happening, you're already in so deep, and now because they're doing things that are not making you feel too good about yourself, your body is also producing the stress hormone, what do you call it now? I can't even think. The stress hormone that makes you now want to chase the high that you felt. And even when other people are telling you that this is not healthy for you, you can't see it because you're in these cycles. And that's where now the Stockholm syndrome you're talking about comes in. We also can become very protective of the very person that is abusing us, because you are attached, you are addicted to that person. It's called love addiction, right? So it becomes really hard because you're being pulled towards the same person. Common sense is telling you, I need to get out of this. But there's so much reaction going on inside of your body, and you're already so addicted to this person that you're actually protective of them.
So how do you break yourself out of that?
So this is where now the work of professionals comes in. And this is, for me who does this work, I do a lot of that with my clients. Just not telling them you need to leave, just showing them what that looks like, what is exactly going on, what's the difference between an actual connection and an attachment, what is going on inside of you, some of your own patterns that are going on that are co-creating this. So when you are aware, this is how I'm showing up and co-creating this, then you can work on it. You cannot heal something you don't understand, right? So for those of us who are doing this work, we call it inner work, which is a deconstruction of your own behavioral patterns. And if you understand why you're in this situation and what's keeping you addicted to this situation, then I can give you the tools on how to pull away from that, right? So it's not bad-aid. It is understanding yourself on a deep level, your own dysfunctional patterns, what part of your maybe childhood dynamic you're replaying in this relationship. Because sometimes we tend to choose partners that are bringing familiarity to the relationship. Most of the time it's a childhood dynamic we are trying to recreate with this other person. So once you have a deep understanding of that, now you can actually start not only extending yourself grace and compassion, because now you understand why you keep showing up for these things. You also now can learn helpful tools, which I give you, on how to start pulling away from this, so that you can nurture healthy relationship within yourself first and foremost, before you can even address the external relationship, and do it in a safe way, because some of these situations are dangerous. Yes.
You've mentioned actual connection and attachment. So what's the difference between having an actual connection with someone and being attached to somebody, where it's now become addictive?
So one of the things people have to understand, and one of the things I teach, is understanding your own attachment style. This is now the blueprint on which we bond with people. And that is something you pick up in childhood. And once you understand what your attachment style is, you will see why you bond so fast with people quickly. Like if you're anxiously attached, you latch on to people really, really fast. Within 3 weeks, you're already seeing yourself walking down the aisle with. Then there are those of us who bond when we feel we bond quickly, or we bond with someone, we feel those feelings of attachment, and then we get scared and then we run away, right? We are avoidant. We feel love and then we get scared, and then we run. So if you are the kind that latches on and you're attracted to the runner, the avoidant person, there's going to be one person that is running and one who is chasing. That's one dynamic of it, right? The other part of it is understanding how to pace yourself when you meet a new person. Pacing yourself. That is building an organic emotional connection. That cannot be built within 3 weeks. That is something that it takes time, but you're paced out. Nobody really teaches you. And movies, if you really think about it, if you watch Disney movies, everything is boy meets girl. They gives the girl a lot of attention. They fall in love. They live happily ever after. In real life, it doesn't work like that. As a matter of fact, if you go into relationships wanting to create an immediate, instant bond full of chemistry, we call that instant relationships, chances are you're going to sabotage yourself because you're going to really not take the time to get to know who this other person is. Relationships are organic. It's an organic process. When we do the love bombing things, or we fall for love bombing, we are bypassing all that organic process of getting to know each other. And then we are in too deep by the time we realize, oops, we did this wrong. So to answer your question, it all comes down to understanding how to create healthy relationship, the pacing of yourself, so you get to know the other person better. So by the time love has actually blossomed between the two people, it's not something instant. Love bombing is instant. Attachments are instant. Connection takes longer to build. It's a gradual process. Yes. All right.
Yes. So we've looked at ways to set ourselves free off of toxic cycles and patterns. So maybe for someone who's gotten out of such a cycle, but right now they're not confident enough, they lost their self-esteem, as we wind up, what are the ways to rebuild your self-confidence?
So that's a fantastic question, actually, because if you manage to get yourself out of that toxic situation, it's imperative that you take your time, and not just take your time by hiding in your basement somewhere. You take the time to heal, because relationships that are toxic, you collect a lot of trauma. They're traumatic. So you have to be intentional about healing the relational trauma, because I don't care if you hold off for 5-10 years and we say time heals everything. It doesn't. Intentional actions heal, right? So it's imperative that you don't jump from one relationship to the other. It's important that you take the time to understand, how did I get here in the first place? And what did that do to me? Physiologically, mentally, emotionally, what did that do to me? There's a doctor I follow, his name is Dr. Gabor Mate, and he says, it is what happens inside of us as a result of what happened to us. So toxic relationships definitely leave a lot of trauma in us. And when you don't work with a professional to release that, even if you wait 10 years, 5 years before you jump into the dating scene again, all that is going to be activated in the next relationship. It's inside of you. They say the body keeps the score, or the body remembers what the mind forgets. And there is nothing that activates that more than being in a new relationship. So it's imperative that you heal that relationship with yourself first. Be alone for some time to do your work. And understand how to get yourself emotionally, physiologically, mentally ready for the next relationship, so you're not bleeding that. And also you're attracting the right kind of partner, because we attract what we are, not what we want. All
right. As we wind up, if you can just give us your parting shots.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that in this time where we are talking about men are this, women are this, there's a lot of this back and forth, talking at each other. And that really doesn't help us in relationships. It really doesn't. Having healthy relationships is not only good for us, it's good for our children, it is good for our community, it's good for society at large. So if we can take a pause, instead of talking at each other, throwing mud at each other, and figure out, first of all, on an individual level, what do I need to do to be that healthy partner? What do I need to do within myself? Number one. Number two, how can I learn how to vet the right partners for me? And then how can I extend the other person grace? Because they also come with lived experiences, right? So when we approach relationships from a place of grace and compassion and seeing each other, I think we have a higher chance of creating healthy relationships, but more importantly, we need to be intentional about breaking some of these cycles. And I think we are the generation of cycle breakers.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you so much for gracing our show today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that was Jacinta Mutonga, and our topic of discussion was getting out of toxic cycles, and I believe that you have gotten to pick a thing or two from the conversation. Don't you go too far. I'll be back with yet another conversation.